All right, Lucetta Zaytoun, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you're here. And before we get started, I like to start things off with kind of a speed round of questions. And so it's basically first thing that comes to mind, you say it's a good opportunity to loosen things up a bit, and then of course for everyone to get to know you.
Okay.
All right. So these are great because I knew I could have a lot of fun with you. So we'll see how Lucetta is like an improv queen. Like, she's just the life of the party, like can think on the spot. So here we go. All right. So whenever you walk into a room for the rest of your life and there's a group of people and there had to be one theme song playing all the time, what would that theme song be?
It would be that theme song from Wicked. Oh gosh, what is it?
Defy Gravity.
Defying Gravity.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my God, I love that song so much. Yeah, that's great.
I love that moment there for a second.
Yeah. All right.
That's a great song because it's just like you're defying gravity, like you're going up against everything and doing what you want to do.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, I could have a whole conversation on that one song alone. Like I agree with you. That's like amazing. All right, so let's say you have your own talk show and your first three guests, who would it be?
Well, my dream would be to have Oprah,
okay,
Reese Witherspoon, and Tony Robbins.
Nice. That's an intense group. That's an amazing first episode.
Yeah, because that's my dream, to reconnect with them or meet them, or that's my dream.
Yeah, love it.
And I'm gonna defy gravity, and one day it'll happen.
I love that. That's perfect. All right, so complete the sentence. On Saturdays, I like to
exercise on Saturdays. I like to just kind of let down a little bit. I might go to brunch with friends. I like to get out in nature, and I have a 4-miler in this park that's just a block away from me. I also like to take that time to kind of catch up on a few things that I didn't get done that week. Mm-hmm. And that's my Saturdays.
Cool. Good. Okay. I love to ask people this. So I'm a huge fan of like rituals, and I love to hear what people do like for their own rituals. Do you have any rituals that you must do every day? And if so, what does it look like?
Yes, absolutely. And the one that seems to be most important to me is every night, the moment I get into my bed and turn the light out, I lay there and I count it on my fingers so that I know exactly how far I am. And I do 10 gratitudes. Mm. And usually the first one is, oh, I'm so grateful for this comfortable bed. Or it could even be, I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. My belly is full. My rent is paid. It can be anything. I'm grateful for my kids. But I always count it on my fingers so that I'm sure that I do 10.
I love that.
And then it brings you so back to the present that you just feel relaxed and satisfied as you drift off to sleep, because you're like, yeah, everything is great.
Mm-hmm. I love that way I do something fairly similar, but I love that way of completing the day with gratitude. Because like you said, there's so much to be grateful for,
Yes. And it's so much to be grateful for what you have in your life right at that moment. Because, in our culture, all we're thinking about is tomorrow and the next day and next week and next month. And what am I going to do? And what am I going to get? And, all of that. Mm-hmm. But it brings you right back to the present, and then you're grateful for all of the amazing things you already have in your life.
So true. So true. What's your favorite book?
And
I know this is a hard one. If you want to say your favorite book, like currently, because I know like sometimes asking people like their favorite book is like asking them like, who's your favorite child? So like your favorite book of the moment.
My favorite book of the moment, of course, besides my own,
Of course.
is Jack Canfield's The Success Principles.
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing, the things that he teaches in that book and the ways that it can just change your life. I've read that book twice, and it's a thick book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it's funny, and I meant to tell you this. You gave that book to me a couple of years ago or a year ago, and I've had it, and I opened it. I just started reading it a couple of months ago, and you know, it is a very thick book, and so I just do a little bit at a time, but I'm only on like, I think like the second chapter. And what I love is he gives you really tangible exercises to do. It's not just a book of like where you're absorbing the information. It's like taking the information and then it's like creating something, visualizing it. I really, really love that. I agree.
Yeah, I love that book. It's really valuable. I highly recommend it. And I have given it away a lot to a lot of different people and recommended it. And they've all said it was just incredible in their life.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Lastly, something I always like to ask everyone is, what does the word intention mean to you?
The word intention to me means that you've gone past just the dream or the wish, and that you've actually decided that you're going to do this and that, and then it becomes an intention. Because the real truth is, the moment of decision is where you turn the power switch on. It's like the moment you actually decide, then it becomes an intention of yours, and you're going to make it happen because you've decided.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you could maybe think back, and if you really did make something big happen, you might even be able to remember the moment you decided. And if you haven't made something happen, you could probably look back and go, whoa, I guess I never really truly decided. But to me, making that decision, then you have an intention, because you're like, I'm going to do this no matter what.
I love that. Thank you. That's beautiful. All right, good. I like that, to loosen things up and kind of get things started in a fun and insightful way. So thank you for playing along.
Thank you.
I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself, like who you are, what's the work you do in the world?
Well, I am a certified life and leadership coach, an international speaker, and, little brag, a best-selling author.
And I should say here that one of your books, speaking of Jack Canfield, was endorsed by Jack Canfield, which is like huge.
It really was. I was just amazed. That's the memoir. And he gave me a really great endorsement on the back of that. And then it was the second book that became, and it's an Amazon bestseller, not a best time, a New York Times, but it's still became a #1 Amazon bestseller. And that's the second book.
Love that. Yeah, that's great. So I'd love for you, because I know a little bit about your story, and I'd love for you, I think that one of the biggest things that I talk about is sort of our own hero's journey. And it's like answering the call and then going along on this journey. And of course, there are obstacles and there are roadblocks and there are these pivotal moments, and then we overcome them. And then it leads us to like sort of the next evolution. And so you have such an amazing, unique journey that you wrote about, of course, in your memoir. I'd love for you to share a little bit with everyone. Take us on that journey that got you to where you are right now, having books endorsed by Jack Canfield, bestseller on Amazon, international speaker. Like, take us on that journey.
Okay. It's kind of crazy, but so after I raised 6 children and launched them out into the world, a life smack hit, and it just shattered everything. I discovered that my husband had fallen in love with another woman. And I just literally hit the floor and curled up in the fetal position for about 6 months. Because all those years of raising children, that was a dream. I loved it, but I didn't save anything back of myself. I didn't earn a single penny. I didn't have any kind of a career. And suddenly I needed one. And I freaked out. And about 6 months in, I had this aha moment in the middle of the night, and I just bolted upright and I was like, wait a minute. I don't have to stay here. The kids are grown and gone. I can't heal in this town. I've got to get out of here and figure out who I am and, who I am not as a spouse or a mother, and reclaim my own authentic identity. And I got to get out there and figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So here it comes. That led me to put everything I owned in storage, sell my car, shut down my phone. That was painful. And I traveled in developing countries by myself for a year. And it was so frightening. I had to push past every fear. And yet it ended up being the best decision ever. Because while out there,
before you go into while out there, can I just ask you this question real quick? I'm curious, can you take us like how you go from like, okay, I don't have to stay here, shutting everything down. Why to developing countries? Like, what was the decision to say, okay, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to travel in developing countries?
That's a really great question. And the reason is, when I got married, the man that I married, he was a high-powered lawyer. And so, we had lots of finances to raise all those kids. And anytime we went anywhere, he always wanted to stay in like a 5-star resort. And that just kind of wasn't me. Like, I'm more about knowing the people, getting to know the culture, experiencing it. We'd be in a 5-star resort and basically never even leave. And I'm like, well, what's the point? We could be in America. It just didn't make any sense to me. So I wanted specifically to go to developing countries so that I could experience those cultures and meet the people. And also one of the reasons I wanted to go to Africa is because I guess actually I raised 7 kids, because I also raised a boy from Liberia. And so that's kind of why Africa was calling to me. I wanted to experience the country that he grew up in.
Did you adopt him? Was he an adopted child or?
No, not actually adopted. Our church brought his family in from Liberia in the very early 90s. They were having a civil war, and they picked them up out of the bush and brought them to America. And his mother got a job at NC State doing housekeeping. So she would get up at 4:30 in the morning and walk to work and work all day. And then in the afternoons and evenings, she was taking naturalization courses. And when I found this out, because David was only 10 years old when he got here, he's in this brand new country. He was having to get himself up, feed himself breakfast, get to the bus, whatever, get home, do his homework by himself. And so I just asked Hawa, I said, what if you just let him stay with us during the week? And so he lived with us during the week. And so, he would get up and have breakfast with us. And then I'd help him with his homework in the afternoon, like I did with all the kids. If he needed to go to the doctor, I'd take him to the doctor, or, all of that during the week. And then I'd take him home on the weekend and he would spend time with his mother. But the kids absolutely loved him, and they started calling him their brother.
I love that.
To this day, some of my kids have children and they call him Uncle Dave.
Oh, that's great.
Really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, sorry. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so go ahead. So that's why you were getting ready to say you chose Africa because of,
because of Dave.
Okay, gotcha. And so talk us through, like, so you're on this journey. So what does that look like? Like, where did you start? Just an overview of like what that, how does one even begin to plan that? And like, are you sleeping? I guess I envision it. Are you like sleeping in like tents? Are you like, what does that look like if it's not a 5-star resort?
Right. Well, I mostly stayed in hostels, and I only planned the beginning part of my trip. I decided that I would go to Costa Rica first, because I felt like when I left the country, you know, I would have just recently been divorced. My whole world was shattered. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure when I leave the country, I'm going to have an epic meltdown. So where better to do that than in paradise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always wanted to completely immerse in Spanish because I took it in high school and college. So I went to Costa Rica. I signed up for a Spanish school. I lived with a Costa Rican family for a couple of months. And that there's some crazy stories in there about that. And then I also got TEFL certified when I was there, which is teaching English as a foreign language. So that once I got out in those developing countries, wherever I ended up, because I didn't even know if I was ever coming back, wherever I ended up, I could always earn a living teaching English. So I got TEFL certified. And then I went to Tanzania, Africa. And there I volunteered for 3 months. And I planned that ahead of time because I was really scared about landing on this huge continent I knew nothing about, alone as a woman. So, and I always loved volunteering. So I volunteered for 3 months and I volunteered at this women's empowerment, and we helped women with microloans. So that was really cool. But then the minute that was over, I had to leave because, you know, they housed us and fed us, and we went out and volunteered. So that's when I had no plan from that moment on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started moving every day or every couple of days. And I just had my one pack, and I was staying in hostels because first of all, it's very inexpensive. But the main reason is if you stay in a hotel, you don't really meet other people. But if you stay in a hostel, the minute you walk in, it's like family. Because everybody's like, oh, where are you from? How long have you been traveling? Where are you headed to next? Or they're like, oh, be sure you do this thing while you're here. It's amazing. Or don't do that thing. It's just a ripoff.
Yeah.
You know? And I had a lot of people, when they found out I was there alone, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you have dinner with us tonight?
That's great.
Dinner.
And what was the total amount of time that you were gone?
The total amount of time was a year. I was gone for a year because I got called back early to the States by my daughter who needed me.
Gotcha. Okay. So then tell us real quick. And I know, you know, people can read the book, and the book has like one story after the next. And so it really details this whole entire journey. But I'd love for you to tell. So what were all the countries that you visited and lived in during that year?
Well, as I said, Costa Rica and Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, Malawi, South Africa, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam.
That's so amazing, right? Like, it's like, what an amazing experience to spend a year immersing in these cultures. I'm curious. So, okay. And I know that there were so many things. And again, the book really takes you on this journey of like things where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, or I'm not going to make it.
Things happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So on those moments where it felt like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing? Like, do you remember, I think that we all have that in different ways, right? Like people may not necessarily be on the other side of the world, but we have things that happen in our everyday life and it feels hopeless. It feels like, what am I doing? What was it inside of you that sort of mustered the courage and pushed past that?
You mean while I was there or to get me there?
While you were there.
Well, while I was out, actually, a lot of times I would be really afraid because I basically had to push past every human fear while out on that journey. It's all in the book. But what I would remind myself is, okay, wait, other women have traveled by themselves and they don't have superpowers. So I can do this. Why can't I do this if other women have done it? And that's kind of where I got my power, you know, for the first part. And then after I pushed past a lot of those fears, I kind of claimed my own power, and I didn't need to say that to myself anymore. Because that's the thing. This is the thing. Courage is the fastest way to self-confidence. Because if you do something that scares you, then you're going to go, whoa, I just did that. And your shoulders go back and you feel better about yourself. And then if you do more and more and more and more, pretty soon you're basically not afraid of anything.
Right.
And you're feeling very confident and you're very strong and courageous.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's so, so true. And I'd love for you, because I know that the biggest thing that when you're giving talks and the books and working with people, you are sort of this catalyst who can take people from the fear to courage. And so, right, which is such an amazing thing. And I think that we all experience that. And you are just a living example. You actually went through it, right? So to be in that state of like, your life you're perceiving it to be like, what's happening? But then waking up and saying, wait a second, I have a choice. And then following through and then continuing to choose courage over fear. So I love that you're sort of this like walking example. And I'd love for you, I know one of the things that you talk about is like, there are steps, right? And so can you share with us like how we would go from feeling fear to feeling courage?
Yes, I can. And this is one of the things that I get hired to speak on the most. And that is, fear is stupid 98% of the time. But it's true. And here's why. Because if you are worried or anxious or fearful, it's in the future. So that means it hasn't even happened yet. Mm-hmm. And if it hasn't happened yet, that means we're making up a story about it. Mm-hmm. And as human beings, we always go to worst case scenario. That's what we do. And so if you can change that story, because here's the truth, statistically, worst case scenario almost never happens. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, I got allergies. Yeah. So if you're sitting in that anxiety or worry or fear, then you're filling your body with cortisol, which is the worry hormone. That is not good for your body. Mm-hmm. But if you could change that story and turn it into something more positive, then who knows? You could get excited and sit in adrenaline. And this is another thing. Fear and excitement physiologically manifest in the body exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. So your body doesn't know if it's afraid or excited until your brain tells it. Mm-hmm. So if you can switch that story, like if you're starting to get worried or fearful, if you just stop yourself and go, whoa, wait a minute, what is the story I'm making up? Mm. Then rewrite that story and sit in that as well. Because the truth is, because you are living and breathing and watching this today, it means you have already been through so many things in your human life. Because stuff happens to all of us, tragedies, scary things, awful things. And you know what? We handled them. Mm-hmm. And this is the truth. Even if you rewrite that story to a positive and something does go awry, you're going to handle it. Mm-hmm. Because you already have. Think back to all the things you've already made it through. Because that's going to help you understand that you're very capable, you're very resourceful. If something happens, you're going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So just relax and trust yourself and believe in yourself that whatever happens, you're going to figure it out. Because that's what
it would be curious to see, like, what are most people, like, really, like, unless there's like a bear coming at you, right? Like, it's like we feel fear for stuff that most of the time, I know in my experience and with working with people, it's fear around, like, typically it's around an emotion, like fear of failing, fear of rejection, fear of, you know what I'm saying? It's more fear of the emotions. And the thing is that the emotions, it's just an emotion. Like, as far as I know, an emotion has never really killed anyone, you know, like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it'll pass. And so, I'd love for you to speak to that a bit. Like, what do you find, like, as you're talking to people, like, how can they take, because our fears feel really real, like, right? Like, we know that it feels really real. And so is there a way that you can kind of like break it down? Like, how do you work with someone to sort of loosen the grasp, and then that way you can get them into sort of the perspective of courage?
Right. And good point. And one of the things I left out is that other 2%, because, you know, I said fear is stupid 98% of the time. So the other 2% goes back to our primal days, where fear was designed for us for survival. Mm-hmm. So it was fight or flight, you know, back during our hunting and gathering days. But now in our culture and the world we live in today, that may only come up in our life, maybe 2% in our entire life. So the other thing about fear, like I said, it's a story you're making up. Mm. And so you have to just stop yourself. And so when I'm working with my coaching clients around their fears, you know, that's one of the things that I'll ask them is, what's the story you're making up? Mm. And they'll tell the story, and then they always go, oh, that's ridiculous. That's not even really going to probably happen. But a lot of it is too, it's about self-doubt, low self-worth. And it's really about pushing past those fears and raising up your self-confidence. Mm. Because then when you're self-confident and you believe in your self-worth, then you're not really afraid of just about anything anymore. Mm. You've gotten so much more confident about it. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the ways to push past your fears. Excuse me, I'm so sorry about this.
You're good.
Is, you know, to stop yourself, think of the story, and then remind yourself, whatever happens, you're going to handle it. And one of the other, if we have a minute, one of the other tangible things that I give is to check your motivation. Are you being internally motivated or externally motivated? Mm. Now, that may not make a lot of sense, and I can give a little quick example.
Yeah.
And that is, while I was out there, I was deathly afraid of heights my entire life. And I got off the bus at this hostel with this one other young man from Germany. And we were the only ones in the hostel at the time because it was off season. And so he asked me, he's like, oh, hi, I'm Julian. And I went, oh, my daughter's name is Julian. And I said, she's 24. And he goes, I'm 24. And it was really crazy, you know? So then he goes, are you going to do it? And I was like, no. And he goes, you're not going to jump? And I'm like, no. And he goes, it's the world's highest bungee bridge. How can you pass up this opportunity? And I was like, easy. I'm deathly afraid of heights. There's no way. And then he looked up at me with those puppy dog eyes, and something happened to me that had not happened in many, many months. I kicked into mother mode because he was like, please, please don't make me go alone. There's no one else here. And this is the whole reason I came here. So I gave in, and I decided I would pay the money. I would go with him all the way, but there was no way I was going to jump. I was just going to support him. But as we were crossing this little wire rickety cage they had stuck to the side of the bridge, we had to walk through it. You could see all the way down, all 216 meters, which is a 60-story building. And I was getting sick. I thought I was going to faint. And then I just put my hands around my eyes like this and willed myself only to look forward. And in that moment, I had a memory of a reoccurring dream that I'd had as a child. I had not thought about this since I was 5 years old, and it came back in that moment. And that was a dream of flying. with my arms out, flying over houses and mountains. And I used to have that reoccurring dream and I loved it. It made me so happy. So I realized in that moment, this is my one and only ever opportunity to truly fly. Mm-hmm. So in that moment, it literally happened in 1 minute. I made the decision I was going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I got out there, and of course they called my number first. And so I went up and I did the bungee jump and I flew. I put my arms out and I actually flew. And so the reason I tell this story is because, it was externally motivated when I was going out there because I was going to help Julian. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, all the fears went with it. Mm-hmm. But the moment it became mine, and like I was talking about earlier, I made that decision and then I came up with that intention. I am going to do this. All the fear went away. Now, it doesn't always go away, but a big part of it does go away when it's yours. So it's good if you can check your motivation. Are you internally motivated or externally? Are you doing this because you really want to do it? Are you doing this because you think you should, or, somebody else wants you to do it, or our culture says you should do it? Like, oh, we should get married. We've been dating for 5 years, but maybe you're not ready. So there's also a part about, saying yes when you mean no.
Yeah, and I think there's something to that, because the thing with the external motivation is I would be curious to see, like, how many times what we're feeling, what we're perceiving, what we're feeling is not even what we're feeling. Like, it's what was, maybe we learned it in second grade, or our friends say it, or this, right? It actually has nothing to do with us. And I love that story, like, where it's like, no, like, internally, when we can connect to something deeper inside of us, like, the truth is there. Like, and at that moment, you knew, like, on what would be perceived as, of course, you're feeling immense fear. Like, of course, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're afraid of heights. You're up at the, in the largest bridge in the world. Like, it's like, okay. But then in that moment, it's like, no, you connected to something inside. And that voice inside was like, no, we're safe. We're good. It kind of goes back to what we were saying before with the fear and excitement feel the same. I agree. Like, it's the mind is telling you. So it's like, to sort of all the answers, everything's inside of us. If we can just connect, and then from that place, anything's possible. And we can actually live in a place of courage.
Yep. That's exactly right. And yeah, those feelings could come from anywhere. They could have come from your parents as a child. Again, it could come from our culture or society that puts those feelings in you.
Well, it's the shoulds, like you said earlier. Like, how many shoulds do we have? You shouldn't do that. Okay, well, who came up with that rule?
Oh, we're just shoulding all over ourselves.
Right.
We do. That's our society. That's the culture we live in.
Well, and I think also it's like, a lot of times I do believe that our ego's job, our brain's job, is to try to keep us safe. And safe tends to mean like, don't risk anything or don't, but that's just not the truth. So it's like, and I think the more, I know in my own life, the more I push past the fear or push past, for me, it's around discomfort, but the more I push past it, the muscle builds. And then you experience on the other side of that, the expansion and the growth and the bliss that's available to you.
Yes. And you're right. And the more you do this, the more you push past, the more comfortable you become with being uncomfortable. And so a lot of those fears just go away.
Yeah. Or so I am curious on this. So do the fears actually go away, or are you just more aware and sort of able to, like in the Buddhist tradition, they have something called the witness. So you just kind of witness it. Like, do you feel like the fears go away completely, or do you feel like they're there, but they're not, like they're not grasping you and holding you back?
That's a really, really good question. I think it could be both.
Yeah.
I think sometimes the fears go away. I mean, Yeah, when they called my number first to
Mhm.
do that bungee jump, my whole body went, so you're right. Some of that fear was probably still there, but I was still excited about going out there. So yeah, it doesn't have that grip on you that it does
Mhm.
when you're allowing it to.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like not a lot, like it's even the thing that we hear a lot of people talking about, especially now. And I believe this, we have so many thoughts a day. Well, the thoughts are always going to be there. The idea is to just allow it to pass or say, okay, this thought isn't serving me, so I'm going to change it. It's sort of not in the rebelling against it. It's like just allowing it, but it's not, it's like fear is no longer, I would love this for myself, and I think I've made strides, but I'm certainly not where I want to be. But where fear doesn't even, it can exist and I can have these thoughts and these shoulds, but it's not in the driver's seat.
That's a very good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're in the driver's seat. And
Right.
fear is either in the back seat or you could put it in the trunk.
Right. So I'm curious, would you ever
out the window?
Would you ever go jump, do a bungee jump again?
Absolutely. Yes.
So the fear of heights is no longer.
No longer. I've actually jumped out of an airplane since then. And I recently rappelled down a 30-story building in downtown Raleigh. And it's just amazing. I'm not afraid. That entire fear of heights is so gone. I could do anything crazy, which I've been doing. I'm crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah. Cool. So I'm curious. So after you got back and sort of reflected on the 12 months that you spent, what do you feel, and maybe this is too challenging to to put into one sentence or a paragraph, but what was the biggest lesson that you learned from that?
Well, I would say it was pushing past fear was the biggest lesson. And, that bungee jump was life-changing. And then I got abducted for a minute. That was pretty scary too. But at that point, I knew the culture and I knew how to speak Swahili. So I was able to talk my way out of it. Mm-hmm. But, I didn't run and get on an airplane and come straight back to America after that. Mm-hmm. I just kept going. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest thing that I learned was about pushing past your fears and owning it, and then owning yourself and your courage, because it makes everything so different. Mm.
I love that. I'm curious, Lucetta, would you say in your life sort of before, like when you were married and raising your children, how big was fear in your everyday life? Like, was it something that you were aware of, or was it something that you felt like it was holding you back? Or because you said that was your biggest lesson. How did you know that fear was something holding you back? Or
I didn't know I needed that lesson until I got out there. That was one of the beautiful things about the way everything went down. But yeah, when raising 6 kids, well, 7, that can be a little bit scary when things get kind of crazy or there's big fights, among the kids. But for the most part, no, I wasn't in fear. I was living out a dream because I always wanted to have a bunch of kids because I grew up in a big family. So that was a dream come true. That was my dream career, to have all those kids and be able to stay home with them. So I really didn't know that I needed to learn this fear lesson, and how perfect for me, because I live alone now. And I run my own company, and it's past fear every day.
Yeah, and what I love about your story also is, as you're talking, like, it's so inspiring to see, like, there are many people who would have been in your shoes and who would have let that really break them down or been the victim to it. Whereas instead, there was something inside of you that was like, no, like I get to create a reality that I want. And you had the courage to listen to that voice and to sort of take those next steps. And I think that that's the beautiful thing, is that you didn't let it stop you. And now you have this whole other, it's almost like, it's so cool for me to see women who have lived the majority of their life, like as a mother, they've raised children, and then they sort of embark on this whole other, my mom being one of them, they embark on this whole other like purpose that comes out of them. And I think, what a gift to have two like really inspiring purposes in one lifetime.
I know, it's really beautiful. And actually, when I got back in the country and I became a certified coach and started speaking and wrote the book, I actually thanked my ex-husband. and he married her, and I actually thanked her for sleeping with my husband because I had all these experiences I never would have had. I learned all these things about myself I never would have. And now I'm living out my purpose in a way I never would be where if I was still there. So it ended up being a tremendous gift.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? I think if we have the belief, I say this all the time, like life is always in our favor, always, even when it doesn't look like it. And you are a prime example. Most people would perceive that as that's the end of their world. Like, why is this happening to me? But really, when you look at it, you had an amazing life with this man, with your children. And then it's like, that was the catalyst, like for you stepping in to, I would venture to say, like from knowing you, your impact is now greater, right? You're writing books, you're speaking internationally. Your impact was incredible. I mean, your children, like, you've done amazing with them. They've gone on and they do amazing things. But for you, now your impact is it's global. And that wouldn't have happened if you probably were still married to him.
Well, yeah. And also, or if I had decided to just sit in victim. Because then you can become very angry and bitter, and bitterness affects everyone around you. But I will say this, when I left the country, I did not think what I was doing was courageous. I thought what I was doing was weak and cowardly. I mean, I was literally running away to the other side of the world. And I thought, is this the dumbest idea ever? But it turned out while I was out there, but somehow I just pushed past it anyway and made it happen. And it turned out to be the best idea ever. And I grew so much, and I was able to make peace with my past and really reclaim my own authentic identity.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing, because I've experienced that in my own life where it would look like it's running away. But the truth is, I think that it's an interesting thing. It's not like you're running away and staying there, but sometimes we need to really like shock our system. Like I know for myself, like I needed a shock. And so when I sold my house, I didn't do I didn't do like you did, but I went to Italy for 12 weeks, but I sold my house. I quit my job, but I needed that sort of wake up to like get me way far out of what I was used to connect to something deeper inside of me. Then I could re-enter, and then things evolved in a totally different magical way. So I think that that's I love that you said that. It's like, it is running away, but it's kind of, you may say this in your book, it's running towards something.
Yeah. Well, you're running back to you actually. And that is in there, because while you're out there, and especially if you travel alone, and especially if you go to other cultures and countries you're not familiar with, you get out there and maybe you're like, oh, well, I behave like this because of that person, or oh, I'm acting like this, or I did that because of our culture, or this or that. And then you get out there by yourself, and some of those things are still happening. And you're like, oh, wait, that's on me. Yes. I can't use them as an excuse anymore. That's a part of me. Then you can choose to either claim it or push it aside.
Absolutely.
You learn so much about yourself.
That's the thing. That's how I describe Italy for me. It was totally, people are like, oh, that was so glamorous. I'm like, right. It sounds like it's glamorous, but it was like, there were no distractions. Like, it was totally me meeting parts of myself, some things I liked and some things I didn't like and needed to work through. And that's why I love putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, because that's kind of where the meat is. That's where you can learn about yourself. You can work through the darkness in order to evolve in a different, more aligned way.
Yes, I totally agree. And you don't have to run away to the other side of the world.
Exactly.
For a whole year. I mean, you could even take a local vacation for a weekend. By yourself and see what happens.
Yeah, like I tell people, like, shut your phone off for a full day. I mean, that could be in today's culture when the technology is so, like, for one day, shut off all technology. Like,
and really, you're like, well, what do I do?
Right, exactly. So, all right, cool. So, talk to us. Tell people where they can find you and, like, what's next for you.
Okay. Well, they can find me on my website,
which we'll link to that.
Yeah, which is lucettazaytoun.com. It's a really weird name. You probably have to see it. And on the website and on Amazon, you can get both of my books. That's me jumping off the bungee bridge right there. This is the memoir. This is the fear busting book.
And they're both really easy reads, but I'll tell you, the itty bitty fear busting book, I think I read it on like a 2-hour flight.
Yeah, you can read it in less than an hour.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things. And people have told me that they keep it in their purse or their car or their backpack, and whenever they get afraid, they just refer back to it.
Oh, I love that.
Because it's so small.
Yeah.
You see, look how thin it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they just keep it with them and refer back to it. So that makes me really happy as an author.
Yeah. And so what's next for you?
Well, what's next is I'm working on my third book. And if you want, I can tell the working title.
Yeah, go.
This one is Bolt. And it's gaining the courage to leave that which no longer serves you.
Mm.
Which is so
I love
true.
that. Yes.
Because our culture has just numbed us down, and we'll stay and suffer rather than make a change because of the fear.
Absolutely.
So that's what's coming up. I'm also, if you go to my website, you can put your email in if you're interested in this. I'm also taking a group of people to Tanzania next October.
Nice.
Go on safari to climb Kilimanjaro if they want to, or to volunteer. And then we're all going to end up in Zanzibar and lay on the beach for 2 days before we come back.
Nice. That's amazing.
So that's
what a trip of a lifetime just in general, but then to have you that, you've been on the ground there and you have the contacts and the resources.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that people won't be quite as anxious about going, knowing they're going with me, because I lived there for 3 months and I'm still in contact with all my friends there.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. I'm also creating a program where you can unleash your inner badass. So it really is about pushing past your fears and bringing that person inside of you out.
That's great.
So that's happening too, and writing the book and coaching. And if anybody feels like they wanted coaching, you can go to my website and sign up for a free 30-minute consult.
Oh, nice.
To see if coaching feels like it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, the thing is, Lucetta, is, and I say this to everyone, and I say it to you all the time, that I think you have this way of energetically showing up, and just by your presence alone, it allows other people to feel a sense of courage and to do things that they didn't think were possible just by your energy. And so I think whether to work with you one-on-one or to be part of your group or to go to your trip truly is such a blessing, and you will not regret it. Like, it's like Lucetta is just, again, she walks her talk.
Oh, thank you so
much. Of course. Well, I mean it.
Tear up now.
So before we complete, though, I'd love for you to share. So these conversations are designed, we love inspiring people and igniting something inside of them. And then what I love is to end it with one, like a really tangible tool or a really tangible tip that someone, after they watch this video, they can literally then step in your case, it would be how can they like sort of ignite that courage and just chip at the fear a little bit.
Yes, that's what I would say is after you watch this, go do something that scares you. It could be, go rock climbing or go do a high ropes course, sign up for it, or fear, courage means, excuse me, bold means something different to everybody. It could be go out to dinner by yourself without your electronics, because the thought of going to eat in a restaurant can terrify some people. Or go to a Toastmasters and stand up and speak, or because that can be terrifying. So fear means something different to everyone. But if you can decide that you are going to go push past some of these fears, you will not believe how it will begin to change your life. And how much better you will feel about yourself, and how much more you'll love yourself, and how much more self-confidence you'll have.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And like you said, it's a muscle and we have to start somewhere, right? Because otherwise the fear is the one going back in the driver's seat. So it's like one small act, like can really give a little more space. And then it, like Lucetta was saying, it can continue to build that confidence and slowly.
So what I say to people is make fear afraid of you.
I love that. I love that. We'll end it on that. Thank you so much, Lucetta, for being here with us. You've been a gift.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You are a gift in my life, Melanie.
Oh, I feel the same. Are you feeling courageous? I'm so happy that Lucetta was able to join us and share her story and teach all of us ways that we can overcome our fear and step into a really courageous life. And so anyway, I just want to say real quick, I'm going to link to them, but her books, it's already tomorrow here is the memoir, and it's the one that I referenced where Jack Canfield actually endorsed the book. It's amazing. Lucetta has a beautiful way of writing and sharing her stories in a way that you read it and you feel really inspired, and it ignites something deep inside of you. And so, of course, I love that. And then her fear busting book is the one that's the Amazon bestseller. And that one is such an easy read. And it's really tangible ways to push past that fear. So I highly, highly recommend checking those out. Now, of course, we'd love to hear from you guys. What were your insights? What are your takeaways? What are you excited to push past? Like, what fear are you saying, I'm going to move past this? And let us know. Lucetta shared some really simple ways of how to start building that courage, right? Because it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's these little simple things that we can do in our daily life that build the muscle of courage, right? And not letting fear take over and not letting fear dictate what's happening, where we're going. So I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. And of course, share with a friend. As you know, I say it all the time, we actually move forward together and we grow together. And so if this video inspired you and you learned a thing or two, share it with someone, share it with a friend, share it with someone who maybe they're going through a hard time and they could use a little dose of courage. That's why these videos are here. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. And here's to all of us living a courageous, courageous life.